I'm Ashrita. Welcome to OneThingAlone.com, and today I'm talking with Kate Motaung. Did I say that right, Kate?
Close. It's Motaung.
Motaung. So like the NG.
It's like a ung at the end. Motaung.
Motaung. I should have asked you this before I hit record.
So,
But I'm so happy to have you here. We've been talking a little bit about kind of our stories living abroad. I lived in Romania for about 10 years with my missionary family. Would you share a little bit about kind of who you are, where you come from, just a little bit about you?
sure. Yeah. Thank you so much again for asking me to chat with you. I was really excited about this. I was born and raised in Michigan and went on a couple of short-term missions trips, sort of in my college years, and then moved to South Africa a month before I turned 21 for what I thought would be 6 months, and that ended up turning into 10 and a half years. So I married a South African, and we had 3 kids over there, and we all just moved back to Michigan about a year and a half ago. So yeah, we had sort of a similar time frame in life overseas.
Yeah. I was sharing. We moved to Romania when I was 7, and I lived there for 10 years and met my husband there. And we did get married there, but then we came to the U.S. after we got married and had our first daughter here. And we live in Ohio, so we're like state neighbors in a way.
Very cool. Great.
That's cool. Well, you blog. You have a personal blog, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what kind of things do you write about?
I write general Christian encouragement for women. My blog is called Heading Home, and I named it after one of the first articles that I had published, which was kind of a personal piece for me about when I was flying to the States from South Africa on the day that my mom died, and someone asked me on the plane, "Are you heading home?" And I didn't know how to answer that question because I had been living in South Africa for 8 years at that time, and I had a husband and kids there, and yet I still felt like my home was Michigan, and so I was very torn as to where my home even was. And so also after my mom's death 3 years ago, she was 59, I've been thinking a lot more about heaven, and so I try to incorporate that into my writing as much as possible. It doesn't always happen, but I try to write for myself to remind myself of the bigger, broader picture of eternity, and hopefully encourage any readers as well that this here is not our home, that we're still waiting, we're longing for our eternal home as believers. So like I said, that's kind of the theme that I touch on. I write about grief sometimes parenting, but usually try to have a spiritual element to most of what I write.
That's so neat. And I know I've been encouraged by your writing, and you recently welcomed home the 5 Minute Friday community on your blog as well.
Yes, that has been really exciting. It was completely out of the blue to me. So Lisa Jo Baker founded 5 Minute Friday about 4 years ago on her blog, and came to the point where she decided to hand it over to someone else. And yeah, I was so honored that she asked me, and it's been, I think, about 8 weeks maybe that I've been doing it. So for those who don't know what it is, every Thursday night I put a one-word prompt on my blog at about 10 o'clock at night, and then a whole bunch of us just write for 5 minutes straight on that one word. And it has been so encouraging and just such a testimony to me about the Lord's creativity and how He made each of us as individuals, because it's amazing how much variety can come out of one word. From usually we get close to 200 people linking up each week, and there's so many differences and some overlapping similarities, but I just love to read the different ways that people write, so that's been a lot of fun for me.
That is awesome. And like on the theme of home, I feel like the 5 Minute Friday community was where I found my blogging home. I started linking up, I think, February or March of this past year, so not that long, but like the ladies just welcomed me, and it's been this instant community And it's been so
Yeah, it's
encouraging
hard to explain, like if you haven't experienced it, isn't it? Like to think that, goodness, I have never met these women in real life, and yet it can be so encouraging really
yeah,
feel
yeah.
true
So
friends.
definitely, if you are a writer or you're thinking of writing, check out 5 Minute Friday on Kate's blog. It's such a good place to come hang out and share your writing. And I love how authentic women are in writing. I mean, you would think that being online, there's this kind of guise of putting on a face, but um, even though I might feel tempted to do that maybe on some of the social media sites to only post positive things, when it comes to 5 Minute Fridays, it's like just bring the mask down and just write
That's
from the heart.
Yeah, I think there's even something about the 5 minute limit that sort of lends itself to that, maybe. I'm not sure, but it's just, yeah, it is. I agree. It's really, it's quite something how it just kind of comes out. You're like, whoa, didn't realize that that's what would come out. I'm often surprised. You think I might have one thing in mind for a word, and then the Lord just directs it somewhere else. But yeah, it's been a good time. So.
Yeah, neat. Well, we're also doing, I think we're both doing the Write 31 Days challenge. And you kind of posted a challenge within the 5 Minute Friday community with that. Can you explain kind of how that works?
Right. So the nester of the website Nesting Place founded 31 Days. I believe she said this is her sixth year, where she encourages bloggers to post on their blogs every single day in the month of October. And so this year, for the first time, I've invited anyone who wants to do that challenge, but to write each of those 31 posts in just 5 minutes each. So I really didn't know if like
It's a
what
lot
kind
more doable, by the way.
right. I'm finding that. I'm like, wow, this was a great idea. So, because I did it last year for the first time and did not only write in 5 minutes at a time. So I am enjoying this one. I'm feeling like I can handle it a bit better this year. But yeah, so we have, goodness, I think almost 100 people linked up on my site only to do the 5 minutes. And then obviously at the write31days.com there are tons, there's like 9 different categories of people writing every day, but not necessarily within 5 minutes. But yeah, I just found when I announced it that a lot of people were like, wow, I wasn't planning to do 31 days, but if it's only 5 minutes, I can handle that. So
I
that was
can do
great,
that.
great
That's doable.
encouragement to, yeah, hear that response. So I hope it's, a good challenge for people. Just I really want people to get writing and just even if it is 5 minutes a day, I think it's a great habit and a great practice to get into. So we're on day 2 today as we're taping this. So we'll see how the month comes out. Yeah.
Well, my Write 31 Day series within like the 5 minute parameters that we have is on abiding in Christ, even when reading the Bible isn't an option. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What does abiding in Christ look like for you?
Yeah, I've thought of a couple things as you mentioned this topic. For me, actually, writing has become quite devotional in nature, not always on purpose, but I find that as I think about certain themes and start writing about them, that it teaches me more about the Lord and what He wants me to learn from Him. And so, for me personally, I find that that has been a good practice of it's quite therapeutic and gets me to think more deeply on a topic within the Christian sphere and really does help me to sort of dwell more on the Lord and on His promises through writing. So that's one thing. And another, I would say, has been being able to find a mentor, like an older woman who I look up to, who is willing to like invest in me. And I've been really blessed in my life, both in Cape Town and in the States, to have several figures like that. And it's not always a formal thing. It's not like we say, okay, every week at this time, we're going to sit down and read this book for 1 hour and then we're going to leave. It's more just someone who's more mature in the faith, who might be like the age of my mom or around about there, who I can just look up to. And I think sometimes we underestimate like that passage in Titus 2 about older women encourage younger women, to be lovers of their husbands and children, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but um, we don't often like intentionally seek out people like that. So I would just encourage anyone who's watching to both ways, to look for someone that you can look up to and try to develop a relationship with an older woman, and also for me to be looking at people who, might be younger than me or newer Christians or something that I can also try to come alongside and encourage. So that's been helpful.
I love that you bring that up. But here's my thing with that. How do you start that conversation? Because it's like, on the one hand, going to someone older and being like, hey, I really like you. Do you want to be my mentor? Just kind of comes across as an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
And then the opposite of it is, going to someone and saying, hey, I think you really need help. Why don't I help you out?
That's a good point, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because we had that situation at our church in South Africa where people were scared and nervous, and it felt awkward, And for me, it hasn't necessarily been that specific of a conversation, like I want you to be my mentor, but more of a natural outworking of spending time serving together in the church, of chatting before or after the services or during church events, and kind of like, just going over and starting just a normal conversation, like how has your week been, if it's an older person, and just sort of seeing who bites in a way, So for me, the women that I'm thinking of now, to be honest, some of them might not even know that I would view them as a mentor type person, but they're the first people that come to mind if I need something, or if I have a problem, or if I'm struggling, In South Africa, I was blessed to be a part of a prayer group that there were just 3 of us who would meet once a week to pray for missionaries. So we were going there with sort of an outside purpose. It wasn't necessarily a mentorship purpose, but just through praying with an older woman was such a blessing. It really fed me, even to listen to someone else praying, even if it wasn't for each other, So something like that. When I think of sort of like college-age girls that I try to encourage here, it's also not like, hey, can I be your mentor? Or, hey, let's read this book together, things like that. It's more just, hey, how's your week going? I've been praying for you. Or, I thought of you this morning and I prayed this for you. Or, send them a verse of encouragement on Facebook, So,
like being intentional with relationships that we already have.
yeah, I think so. And, asking more specific questions, like, how can I pray for you? Or something like that, it doesn't have to be so formal, but just, like you say, being more intentional about checking in with people, I guess.
I like that, because I'm kind of an introvert by nature. So small talk is kind of hard for me to just come up with topics beyond how's your week been or how's the weather. So finding some of those, like, hey, I've been praying for you, or here's an encouraging verse. That's doable.
Maybe even like if you read a blog post that really spoke to you or made you think of someone else, to actually pass it on to them and say, hey, this made me think of you, just wanted to share it with you, or just try to start a conversation that way, I guess.
I like it. Yeah. What's something that you feel kind of in this journey home, or thinking about life as heading to our eternal destination? What's something that has been a struggle for you in either your walk with Christ or anything along those lines that you feel would be encouraging for other women?
Sure. I think 2 things come to mind. One is just sort of materialism, to be honest. It can be really in your face, and just wanting things in this world and getting caught up in placing maybe too much value on things that are here and things that are temporary. So I think, for example, if my kids drop something and it breaks, or something that had sentimental value to me and it's not fixable anymore, what is my reaction? Do I shout and yell and get all upset because it's broken and it meant a lot to me? Or do I say, you know what, I am disappointed that it's broken, but I can't take that with me to heaven anyway. So in the broader scheme of things, it's really not that big of a deal, you know. So that's a challenge to me that I often overreact about things that are temporary. And so it's something that I've been working on, even instilling in my kids, trying to have that perspective of what are we able to take to heaven with us, like what is important eternally speaking, and what do we just need to say, well, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, but that's not a forever thing, you know. So that's one thing I think. And I think also the first time that my mom was diagnosed with cancer was right as I was going back to South Africa for what I thought would be 2 years after my first 6 months. And during that time, I really had a spiritually dry period. I just kind of went into neutral, and I was just very flat. I had no desire for anything really. And it was really a challenge because I was in South Africa with the intention of wanting to do missions work and do college ministry, and I had no desire to pray or read my own Bible, and I felt very hypocritical during that time because I felt like I was supposed to be an example and leading college students, and I couldn't do it, you know. So that was a challenging period looking back, and I
So what
can't.
did you do in that time? Like how, I'm assuming, well, if I were in that, I know I've gone through periods of like spiritual drought, and there's a lot of guilt and maybe shame that comes with that, especially when you're in a position where you should be serving, and you're talking about, you know, maybe the goodness of God or the joy of the Lord, and you're not feeling that yourself.
Yeah, I did feel very guilty during those times, and really I can't put my finger on. I've often even asked my husband, like, what was it that got me out of that slump? Because it was quite a bad time. And I can't put my finger on it except to say that like I kept going to church. I kept doing what I was supposed to be doing, and I kept, you know, reading with other people and just kept doing the things that should have been feeding me. And eventually the Lord just brought me out of that. As far as I can remember, there was no specific, like, oh, this happened and then I was fine. It was more of just a gradual coming out of that valley, you know. But the Lord was faithful to keep me, and it wasn't that He was more distant, it was just, you know, a dry patch. And so He really was faithful in that time, and I'm so grateful for that.
I love that. I'm reading a book. I can't remember the title of it right now. I think it's Amazed or Awestruck. I'll link up to it in the post. The author talks about how spiritual drought is just as normal and should be celebrated in the Christian life just as much as spiritual highs, because God often uses that drought period to create in us a hunger and create in us a sense of being desperate for Him, because when everything is kind of cruising and going okay, we might not necessarily sense our deepest need, our desperateness to see Him. And it's when maybe He removes the feeling of His presence that the best soul work is done, and tilling up the ground of our hearts and revealing what's there. And so I love that you shared that, just being faithful and just staying with it and continuing to seek the Lord and seek His face brings you out of it into, again, a place where you're feeling like it's okay, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that's so true, because it's often in those times that we just realize our dependency on the Lord too, right? Often on those high times, it's like, oh, I can do this, I got it, I'm good, like I'm doing this in my own strength. And when you're just flat out rock bottom, you realize like all we have is God, and He's really the one that's doing everything, you know. No matter how we're feeling, it's still His grace and His faithfulness that sustains us. So, yeah, I agree.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I feel like I could be chatting with you all morning, but I want to let you go. Before we go, is there any one word of encouragement or one thing that you would like women to walk away from this conversation with?
Wow, I think, yeah, just to encourage you that there is a bigger picture than just what we can see here and now. And often um, it's so easy to just get stuck in the daily grind and feel like, what is the purpose? And whether you're going through a really rough time or things are just sort of status quo, we can easily get discouraged. But just to encourage you to remember the big picture, that we're waiting for heaven, and this is temporary, and we're pilgrims here. So, we shouldn't get too comfortable here, because there's something so much greater waiting for us that we are heading towards.
Hmm.
So,
I love
yeah,
that. Enjoy the moment, but don't get too comfortable.
right.
You're headed for heaven.
That's it. Good. Well, thank you so much, Ashrita. I've so enjoyed
Absolutely.
chatting with
Kate,
you.
where can viewers find you?
My website is katemotaung.com. I can spell it if you need me to. KateMotaung.com. It's been quite comical to see how many variations of the spelling of my last name exist in people who are
Oh
linking
my
up
gosh,
to
I feel like the
this.
first 6 weeks I'm doing 5 Minute Friday, I type your name in the search bar and I'm like, I'm gonna get it right one of these days.
I've been Kate Montague and Kate Montang and Kate.
But I can totally relate because I have like a hard to spell name too, so all good.
That's funny. Cool. Thank you so much again for this.
Thank you, Kate, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. All right. Bye.
Bye.